Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Jeff Neville, and I'm delighted to be here today moderating a really great panel discussion on AI disruption and how it really relies on talent, and organized by the Retail AI Council and co-sponsored by my firm, Sofel. First, let me introduce myself and my firm. Sofel is a leading management consulting firm who really specializes in retail and direct-to-consumer brands. We focus on helping retailers navigate the changing landscape, adapt to emerging technologies, and stay ahead of the curve in an increasingly competitive market. Today's panel is specifically uh, relevant as artificial intelligence is revolutionizing the retail sector at an unprecedented pace. In fact, the recent Retail AI Council member survey highlighted that almost 90% of respondents plan to increase AI capabilities and investment in their people over the next 2 years. So clearly, we're witnessing a paradigm shift here in the way business operates, and we believe those who fail to embrace AI risk falling behind. However, successfully harnessing the power of AI requires more than just technology. It demands a talented workforce with the right skills and cultural mindset. Today, we want to explore how retailers can attract, develop, and retain top AI talent from leading institutions like the Massachusetts Institute for Technology. And we've assembled an exceptional panel of experts, both from MIT and Sloan, who will share their insights and experiences on this topic. And before I dive into the discussion, I want to allow our panelists time to introduce themselves. So we can start with Sarah and then go around the panel, and then we'll get to the questions. Sarah?
Perfect. Thank you. Happy to introduce myself. Also very happy to be here and excited to have this conversation. So my name is Sarah Schmid. I'm a current first year MBA student at the MIT Sloan School of Management. I am also currently the co-president of the school's Retail and Consumer Goods Club. I can speak more to that later. And prior to Sloan, I was in sales and business development at a digital marketing software company, selling and interfacing largely with big and small retailers across the US. So that's kind of my background.
Mark?
Thanks, Jeff. Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Newhall. I'm the Director of Employer Relations and Recruiting at MIT Sloan. And my team and I have the privilege of going out and building relationships with companies that want to engage with and potentially hire the students, roughly 1,500 students across the 6 master's programs that we have here. And prior to coming to, I've been at Sloan for 4 years, and prior to coming to Sloan, I spent about 25 years in the executive recruiting world.
Hi, everyone. Delighted to be here and looking forward to the conversation. My name is Glenn Wong. I'm the Associate Director of CCL Alliances. CCL is the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab here at MIT. And Alliances is the department within CCL that works with industry partners, with other organizations to build relationships between the faculty, the students, and the research that gets done here, and to bring that out into the world. So a small part of what we do is look at recruiting and to help students who are largely PhD students in our lab find placements or opportunities outside of an academic path. So looking forward to the conversation here, and I'll pass it on to Aisha.
Thanks, Glenn. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here. My name is Isha. I am a PhD student at CSIL at MIT. I study natural language processing and just generative AI in general. So it's kind of a, a good time to be on this panel. I recently graduated from Harvard, where I studied applied math and psychology and did a lot of business things at HBS. So this intersection is really interesting for me. And yeah, excited for this conversation.
Thank you, Isha. And I know or hopefully most people on the webinar, recognize MIT as a leader in computer science and artificial intelligence. Like Glenn and Isha, Glenn, maybe you could start with giving the attendees a little background around CSAIL and some of the work that the group does at MIT.
Yeah, no, I'd be very happy to. CSAIL, or the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab, is largely housed in the Stata Center here on campus. So that's the sort of funky building that we've got highlighted in our background image here. It's a Frank Gehry building that went up in 2003. And that was actually when CSAIL itself was created as an entity. It was the merger of two labs, two powerhouse labs at MIT that have been around since the late 50s and 60s. It was the AI lab, which was formed in 1959, and the CS lab, which was formed in 1963. So both disciplines, if you will, have had a long tradition here at MIT. And right now, CSAIL is the largest research lab at MIT with over 130 different principal investigators. So that's faculties and researchers. And the lab itself has over 1,500 people here, the majority of which are students. The sort of work that happens here is really cross-disciplinary. There's obviously fundamental work happening in artificial intelligence, computer science, but there's also robotics, cryptography, quantum computing, architecture, wireless, and the list sort of goes on. Basically anything that has to do with compute and how it can be used in practical ways has some home here within CSAIL. So there's a lot of different research projects that are covered, and a lot of topics that are done. Among the faculty here include 10 Turing Award winners. And if you're not familiar with the Turing Award, it's the equivalent of the Nobel Prize for computer science. So it's a tradition and sort of a pedigree that we're very proud of here. It includes folks who invented, the World Wide Web or the Ethernet, or had some of the fundamental contributions to cryptography and zero trust proofs. And some of the basic building blocks to how we transact and use the internet today some of that foundational work was done here. More recently, as you can imagine, we've got a lot of work that's been focused on generative AI, and some of the really sort of advances in robotics, and again, in cryptography and some of these other areas as well. As a result of the type of research that happens here, unsurprisingly, there's a lot of spin-off activity in startups, right? And by virtue of being here in Kendall Square, we just have an amazing ecosystem of companies, of VCs, of other startups. And so it's the graduates here go on to do amazing things, either on their own or in conjunction with some of their faculty. And just to give you a sense of it, some of the companies that had spun out of CSAIL that you may be familiar with include Akamai, iRobot, and Dropbox. And then more recently, there's a company called Mosaic ML that was bought for about $1.3 billion in July last year, along with a number of other companies that are in interesting manufacturing arenas, in no-code software, and then in interesting applications of wireless that apply to healthcare. So lots of really interesting work that goes on here, and we're very fortunate with both the faculty and the students we get to attract.
And Isha, I know you're a PhD student there and a fellow. Maybe you can kind of expand with some examples of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so I work on generative AI specifically in language. I am a first year, so ask me in a few years and this might have changed. But for now, I think I work on a lot of I'm really interested in the kind of intersection of reasoning and language models. So trying to figure out how we can build language models that kind of reason like humans do. And then more kind of applicably to the rest of industry, how can we integrate these language models so that they're actually able to be used by like end users in a variety of industry settings. So I think a lot of the stuff I'm interested in, even in a broader context, are technical problems that are motivated by industry applications, kind of integrating generative AI models into like very core business settings, and trying to solve technical problems that arise from doing that.
And in that work, are you, I assume you're working with a whole number of multidiscipline students within the group and within CSAIL?
Yeah, it's great. I think one of the really great things about being a grad student, especially at a place like CSAIL and a place like MIT, is that both at MIT and then kind of in the surrounding Kendall Square area, there's so many people who work on such interesting things. So I've gotten a chance to work with people at IBM Research, with people at Google, and then even within MIT here, there's people who work on language, there's people who work on like vision type things. And I think one of the like very crux problems of generative AI is that it's like finally one of the stages of technology that integrates many, many different aspects of the world. And so I think having that interdisciplinary thinking is very important, and a real blessing of being able to go here.
Fantastic. So let's shift gears. Let's go to the other side of campus, I guess, to Sloan, and maybe Mark, you can talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that Sloan is taking on with the students related to AI and the school itself.
Sure. Well, there's an overall recognition by our faculty that Gen AI will affect all organizations, roles, responsibilities, and the ability to advance and have a successful career is going to be ultimately tied to your ability to leverage Gen AI in an effective way. In fact, I was actually at a faculty town hall this morning, led by our deputy dean, who's over all of the degree programs here at Sloan. And the topic was Gen AI. And it was really exciting to see all of the different ways the faculty are using Gen AI in the classroom and the plans going forward. One of our professors said that you're unlikely to be replaced by an AI bot, but you may be replaced by someone who can use Gen AI. And I think that's the general sentiment of the school and of our faculty, that we really need to prepare our students because this is changing fast. So in our own office, we use ChatGPT almost every day, and we're just rolling out a Microsoft Copilot pilot, which we're very excited about. So starting to use that in all that we do to better support our students. I'm sure Sarah can talk a little bit more about what is happening in the classroom. As I understand it, I'm on the staff side, not the faculty side. It's used both in terms of creating teaching solutions, so grading lectures, quizzes, tasks, but also in the actual class discussions or assignments themselves. So maybe I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Sarah,
happy.
I'm really interested in
sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry about that. Yes, happy to add on there, Mark. Thank you. Yeah, I think you guys are both spot on in terms of like what's really great about being at Sloan is that it's a super interdisciplinary approach to how we see AI and how we use it. And what's also really exciting is that we are the School of Management, so there's no expectation that students coming in have any kind of prior experience or knowledge about AI. But we also, on the other hand, have students who are incredibly experienced and incredibly knowledgeable. So there's a lot of like Sloanies helping Sloanies is what we like to say. And so in terms of the faculty and the professors across the board, every single class I've been in, professors encourage students to use AI in any kind of way that they see fit, and also to really share their experiences and have that sort of dialogue about ways in which that students can use it, professors can use it. So it's very open and collaborative in that sense. And then some of the more formal ways that AI has been integrated into the curriculum are classes that are being offered. So whether it's like the class AI for Impact, there's a hands-on deep learning course as well. And then actually in the fall, there are 2 first years who are going to be co-teaching a class next semester. So it's a class taught by students And I believe it's called Gen AI for Managers, and it's basically a course about how to use AI in workplace and business settings. So that's definitely on my list to take, and I think it's also just really cool that it's going to be co-taught by actual students who have a lot of hands-on experience with AI. And then there's a lot of different like opportunities in terms of clubs. There's the AI ML conference that happens every year. So that was a huge success as well.
Sarah, go back to your comment about where, it's a MBA program, and so there's not a lot of expectations of deep technology, which, obviously is the value of this Sloan education, as you get to combine things. The thing I'd be interested in is when we talk to clients about this space to non-technical people, there's a lot of concern about trust, and there's a lot of fear because it's unknown. Are you addressing that in your coursework, or are you seeing that in the organization at all, or how does Sloan position you to better address those issues as you kind of graduate and move on to the workforce?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think the fact that the overall approach is very collaborative and very much like we want to see you guys come with your ideas makes it a lot more open and welcoming for people to just explore and experiment. I know that's not necessarily a direct answer to your question, but I think that kind of like collaboration and ethos is something that's very transferable to the workplace post schooling. And I think that kind of like, hey, we're all learning this together. We don't really know what the limits are to this technology. Let's figure it out together. And how exciting is this that we get to do this and have this opportunity? And so for me, I personally don't really have like this kind of like a technology background. So I also am one of these people who is like so excited to learn and take on every opportunity to do so. And also it was very overwhelming for me coming into a place like MIT, thinking, oh, maybe I'm not fit for this. But I think that sort of like approach, whether it's through the CDO or whether it's through the faculty or the professors, really saying like, hey, we're all kind of learning this together and you should also come along for the ride, is something that could be easily transferred to employers and other companies as well.
Right. Great. All right, I'm going to keep you talking. I'm going to roll into the other part of your very busy person at Sloan. You also, I understand, are president of the Retail and Consumer Products Club. So why don't you help the audience understand the club, who you are, who's typically part of it, how you even define retail, because could be many things, and what do you guys try to do and kind of accomplish during your time?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, so I am one of the co-presidents of the Retail and Consumer Goods Club at MIT Sloan. I would say candidly that, MIT Sloan is not like a retail school necessarily, and it's very much, it attracts a lot of tech people, consulting people, but there is a smaller but mighty group of retail enthusiasts here. So our club actually has about over 100 active members right now. Really what we focus on is bringing more awareness and broadening the definition of exactly what retail can mean and what consumer goods can mean. So really what we've done throughout the year is a lot of collaborations with industry leaders and companies. We do a lot of collaborations with other clubs, particularly the Sustainability Club, as well as the Entrepreneurship Club. So we had an event with Ashita Kabra Davies, who is the CEO and founder of By Rotation, which is a peer-to-peer rental, fashion rental company. So that has been really, really cool. And that was a really well-attended event. And really what we're looking to do is just partner with more organizations, founders, retail industry experts to come and engage with the student body to really kind of pique interest into what retail actually is and how broad of a space it actually can be and how diverse the employment opportunities particularly are within these industries.
Isha, if there, for retailers and direct-to-consumer organizations that are really looking to tap into deep kind of technical, pure science, AI and machine learning skills, is there an equivalent of organization or group that that's part of CSAIL?
I think Glenn can probably speak to more direct industry partnerships, but I think from a student standpoint, we have a few like student organizations, and most directly, I'm one of the co-presidents of GW6, which is the Graduate Women in Core 6 group. It's just essentially a women in computer science group at CSAIL and at MIT in general. And so I think we have held a bunch of really cool events, kind of partnering with companies and partnering with various industry partners who can come and kind of talk to the students about possibilities of employment after grad school. I think a lot of students, especially at MIT, have industry aspirations and want to kind of combine their work with the cutting edge of what's happening in the real world, so to speak. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to kind of work with either student groups or people at CSAIL Alliances to bring your work to the forefront of CSAIL students, I think.
Yeah,
Glenn,
and
do you want
so
to add on?
yeah, I was just going to say we don't necessarily have a retail club or a focus per se, but as Isha mentioned, and we do have the Alliances sort of program, if you will, of which I work directly for, and the core thing we're trying to do is build up an alliances of companies that have some relationship with the lab. It includes, I think, companies that you might consider in the retail space, as well as manufacturers, big tech companies. It really spans the range of industries. And one of the big benefits is that those companies can, spend time with students, can sort of be a resource for our faculty and our students to tap into when they want to get more experience on different industry topics. For example, just recently we had a professor who, had developed some new work and new technology that wanted to shop around. And we were able to say, well, here's all the companies that we have in our docket. It's over 80 different companies at the enterprise level, and then more than 80 plus at the startup level. And it said, which of these companies would you like a warm introduction into? And so having that kind of network is pretty neat. And the kinds of work they do may have a wide range of applicability, and having that dialogue. In the reverse, you can imagine companies become part of the alliance because they want to tap into both the research that's happening here, as well as some of the the talent and the students, as well as the startup ecosystem, right? And so companies could be saying, look, we're really interested in this technology. Like, who can we talk to learn more about it? Or, are there students that we could start to engage with that, we could see if they might be interested in the kind of problems that we're facing or that we're thinking about, and see if there's a good match between some of what they're doing on a research perspective and what we might be able to interest them in from a future kind of work problem perspective. One quick thing I'll just maybe mention is that as a PhD in a research lab, we do have a lot of our students who end up going towards academia, right? Unsurprisingly, it's about a third, roughly speaking. But of the remaining 2/3, about a third of those, well, about half, so a third of the total, will go on to established industry positions, and then that sort of remaining third often will go to startups. So that was a sort of a longitudinal study we did a while back, but and I'm sure that changes from year to year, but it gives you a sense of the types of outcomes that some of our students have.
Got it. So I want to shift gears a little bit and maybe start, Sarah, go back to you with a question about the future. And part of your work at Sloan and a part of your work in the Retail and Consumer Products Club, I'm assuming you have a point of view on how AI might disrupt retail and as well as kind of make it a better place for the consumer and the customer experience. So maybe you can start there, and see what your thoughts are.
Yes, absolutely. I think Isha will probably have a more thought out answer for this, but I think really the main way that I see AI disrupting retail, not only retail, but also many different industries, is with personalization. So whether it's like, personalized shopping, I think is going to be a huge, huge thing. On the more back end of things, I think inventory management, being a lot more efficient with, having the right amount in stock in terms of inventory management. Another thing, which is also probably pretty problematic, is dynamic pricing. I feel like we've talked a lot about that in our own classes, and particularly talking about the ethics of that. And then another thing that we've spoken about is also just supply chain optimization. So I feel like those are kind of the main ways in which. How exactly? Maybe Isha can speak to that.
All right, Isha, solve all the world's problems in supply chain.
This is a little bit beyond my pay grade, but I think kind of building off of what Sarah said, I think what she said is spot on in terms of the ways that generative AI or like typical AI tools are going to be integrated into the retail pipeline. I think one of the things that we need to think about kind of more recently that's been unlocked is like the more generative AI aspect of things. So I think from an advertising point of view, there's a lot of like very cool startups that have worked with automating the entire advertising pipeline, whether it's text advertising or video advertising. I think that's a very cool aspect that has to be unlocked. I think from marketing to merchandising to even creating new products. I think the entire pipeline of retail, I think there's areas of generative AI that can be integrated into all of that. And then also just from a kind of labor point of view, I think one of the things that I think is most interesting about generative AI is it's not always the best tool for companies to integrate. I think one of the things that I find really interesting is that whenever there's a kind of a new fad or a new area of technology that gets unveiled, everyone is suddenly like, I need to integrate this into my pipeline, but it's not always the best tool for everyone. And I think one of the things that is interesting is that even though it might not be the best tool to be integrated into like a product pipeline, it does help everyone do their work. So like I think Mark was mentioning, everyone uses ChatGPT on a daily basis, just in like their day-to-day work. And I think there's kind of two aspects of this to look at. One is how is AI and generative AI going to be integrated into your like actual industry and product pipeline, and the other one is how can you use it to help your workers do their work more efficiently. So I think they're kind of parallel things to study, but are distinct. And I don't think everyone should automatically be terrified that generative AI or other AI tools are automatically going to kill their entire business, because I think oftentimes it's not about replacing jobs, it's about helping people do their jobs more efficiently. So I think even from like an office productivity point of view, I think in my head it's kind of like, Microsoft Office Suite version 3 or version 4, where it just helps people do their jobs a lot more efficiently.
Interesting. So the an organization should look at some of this as a technical tool to help certain things, but then also a change management and training tool to just help people be better.
Exactly. I mean, again, I'm not an expert in this. This is just kind of how I view things. But I think when something as big as this comes along, it's not necessarily the first. I feel like people's first instinct is like, okay, I have to like integrate this into my entire company. I think baby steps are also really important. So just like taking the very first step to figure out like, okay, how can I use ChatGPT, or how can I use a lot of the like very cool image generating pipelines, or how can I use just the kind of more productivity themed generative AI tools in my day-to-day work. That's a really good first step, I think, for companies to integrate AI into their workforce. That's not necessarily centered around, okay, we have to have an all hands meeting, our entire company's focus is going to change. I think there's baby steps in between that.
Right. Mark, you're nodding your head. You want to add to that?
Well, I was just thinking about our own usage. So as I said, we've rolled out a Microsoft Copilot pilot, and today was the first day I had access to it. And so I've had it summarize every email and every document and newsletter that I've looked at today, and it's been a fantastic savings of time. So I I completely agree with Isha. It's a matter of just diving in and doing it. I know one of our faculty members at the town hall earlier today said that they did not want to be called out by a student that they don't have experience with Gen AI. So the market is sort of forcing them to push, and maybe push a little farther than they'd otherwise be comfortable, but they know that students are using it and they don't want to be left behind. And I think that's kind of my advice to companies, no matter what the industry is, just to get out and start using these tools, because it's pretty remarkable what they can do. And again, you don't need to do it all from the get-go.
Yeah,
Just in terms
that's-
of AI, but I just think retail, rather, I think bots are going to continue to be a really interesting avenue to disseminate information and provide customer service. It's only going to get better and better, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, if I can just add something to it. I agree with everything that everyone said. And, I would bucket some of the things that we've been talking about as like, there's some, obviously some important opportunities for automation, right? And some of that automation is for personal efficiency, right? As Mark just mentioned, like he's got, Copilot now summarizing all his emails, right? So that's a huge time savings for him. And then on that automation front, right, just, in general, it will lead to efficiency, and there are, supply chain or other things where you're going to be making it either more efficient or more optimized, right? And so there'll be cost savings and other benefits for companies. I think the part that probably feels a little scary, but I think is also on the horizon, especially with things like Gen AI, is also creativity, right? Like these AIs are actually going to be creating new things, and not necessarily that they create the products themselves, but they could certainly be helping that creative process, right? As well as enabling new types of products to hit. And again, pertinent to the group here, the retail group, I can imagine new home products coming out, right? That are only enabled because you have things like generative AI and other AI technologies. And a quick note is that AI, as I mentioned up front, is not new. I mean, we've certainly been studying AI and AI type machine learning, et cetera, for many, many years, and it sort of keeps going in a boom bust cycle for those of us who've been in for a while. And I forgot to mention during my intro that I worked in the private sector before my current role for over 20 years. And there was, a period where IBM was pushing AI a lot, and it wasn't getting a huge amount of traction because everyone thought of it as just like a consulting gig. But one of the things that we're exploring in the lab right now is using a lot of these AI techniques and then merging it with things in the physical world, like robotics, could lead to a huge opportunity with robots in the home, for example, right? And that could be a really disruptive kind of event, if you will. We see the Roomba and a few things like that, but by and large, most of the robotic type work has been done in manufacturing lines, right? like car manufacturing, you think about. And in those cases, those robots are very pre-programmed to do very set things, right? It just moves widget A to widget B, or welds part C to part D. And with the sort of advances that we've been seeing here in the lab and other places, you're starting to get robots that can self-train, or using Gen AI, you can actually create data that helps train a model that a robot can use to navigate uncertain, terrain or work in circumstances that it's not familiar with. And that could really just open up the kinds of products and offerings that we have access to.
That's great. I'm thinking about a few things here in my own world. So we've just talked about, we've got opportunities and concerns about using AI in the marketing department, the product design and development department of a retailer, supply chain, warehousing, finance, e-commerce, store operations, IT and engineering, you name it, right? There's opportunities everywhere. And I'm, if I'm the CEO or on the board of retailer, I'm thinking, how in the heck am I going to attract the right people to help me transform my organization and use these tools effectively and efficiently? And I'm really comfortable hiring from certain pools of resources that are traditional retail, but now you're telling me I gotta kind of figure out how to attract and retain some of the most sought after talent on the globe. And what the expectation from my board is that they have to be the best and the brightest. Like, so how, that's a huge order, right? And I'm gonna start with Mark because he's smiling, but how do you do that? Both from, look at generally how do you do that, but specifically with MIT, how do I at least have a chance?
Give us a call. So let's start there. I will preface this by saying that I run the employer relations team at MIT Sloan. I have a colleague and counterpart, Francis Borrego, who runs employer relations basically for the rest of the institute inside of the career advising and professional development team, which is basically the career team for the rest of campus. And I'm happy to put anybody in touch with Francis. Folks can always just reach out to us. So what's unique about Sloan is that we have 6 master's programs here. So a Master of Business Analytics, a Master of Finance, a Master of Science and Management Studies, the MBA, a full-time 1-year mid-career MBA program called the Sloan Fellows Program, and then our executive MBA program. So we have students that are right out of undergrad all the way up to people with 20 years of experience. And that's very unique inside of business schools. So we can help companies in lots of different ways when it comes to addressing talent needs. And so, and our faculty are very aware of this. So all of our courses have AI, Gen AI in particular, integrated these days. So it's really about engagement, honestly, and getting your brand out and getting in front of the students. So it's partnering with our retail club. It's working with our office, hosting events, hosting panels. We had the chief strategy officer of LVMH on campus earlier this semester, and that was obviously a big draw. And so kind of coming to campus and talking to students and building relationships is the best way that you can recruit. And it's how a lot of companies are able to compete with some of the bigger brands that were, big tech brands were mentioned earlier. It's really about engagement. Our students are interested in working in companies that they can really make a big difference, but they need to know who you are and they need to really experience you and your culture in order for them to want to do that.
Glenn, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, certainly. I'll add a bit more. Again, we've got a very specialized group as well, given that they're, PhD students, right? And many come in not necessarily thinking that industry is their endpoint. But, I totally agree with what Mark said. Engagement is a big deal, right? If you're Google, people have probably heard of you, but if you're some other company, you may not be a household name. And household names that may be common to one subset of the population may not be so common to others. So, for example, one of our newest members in our alliances was Cartier, and so we had some people who were like ecstatic that they were suddenly in our fold, right? We had others who were like, "Who's Cartier?" Right? And so just engagement, being on campus. And then certainly the folks who come in to do the deep research in these very specialized technical areas are looking for interesting problems. And to Mark's point, again, they want to have impact, right? They want to do something that's important. And having the opportunity to hear about what are some of the problems that companies are tackling and where they're thinking about applying AI or machine learning and such is very helpful for them to get a sense of what the possibilities are. And then quite frankly, as a former PhD student myself, like people who come here don't necessarily know what's out there, right? It's from an industry perspective, and or how their specific field of expertise may apply to the outside world. And so again, that engagement and that education sort of works. Like having the companies come in really helps educate the students about what the possibilities are and allows them to have a better sense of where they might be able to have impact, not just in an academic sense or by publishing another paper. Now, there are folks who, and I've certainly seen this in the life sciences, in the computer sciences, it's maybe less so, but it's still important, is they may go into industry, but still want.
We lose them? All right. We'll wait for him to come back to finish. So is Sarah. All right, yeah, Sarah, what from a perspective, what are the students looking for in potential employers? And as a retailer and an employer, what should I be focused on, or what stories should I be telling to kind of build that relationship and engagement with the student body?
Yeah, absolutely. It does look like Glenn's back if we want to
Yeah,
go
sorry,
back to
I
him,
think I
but
disappeared
Keep
for a
going.
second.
okay.
Keep going, Sarah.
Okay, sounds good. Yes, I mean, I just +1 echo everything that Mark was saying. I think on-campus engagement or even just virtual engagement goes so far. I think it's no secret that like recently it's not been an excellent job market, and so I think those in-person or like one-on-one touch points really go so far, particularly for those graduating who, you know, kind of are going through the recruiting process not really expecting responses, which is just like, yeah, it's a disheartening process. And I think being able to, it's also a great opportunity for lesser known retailers and companies and brands to be able to really engage with the students and actually demonstrate that they are really excited about hiring and recruiting new and excited talent. So I think on-campus or virtual recruitment and efforts really go a long way. And then particularly, I'll echo the club involvement and just reaching out to clubs. I think that is just a huge part of our programming here, student-led programming here. And we have all different types of industry groups, and we often do collaborations. So we are really excited next year to do collaborations with the AI/ML club. And yeah, I think every single club has some sort of either conference or speaker series. And even if a company, you're not really hiring right now, it's just a really great way to have that open dialogue and have those connections and fostering that relationship, so that if later you are hiring or the opportunity does arise, you have that relationship already and that access to the talent pool, which is us, I guess.
Mark, is the recruiting on-campus recruiting process back to normal post-COVID? Are you seeing still a hesitancy for companies who are recruiting to come back onto campus, or where are you at with that now?
I'm not sure I know
And
what
is that a way to distinguish yourself as an employer?
I'm not sure I know what normal is exactly. I started March 2nd, 2020, and a week later the world fell apart. So I think it's been an interesting run here. As Sarah said, like engagement, and I guess Glenn said as well, engagement matters. So we host presentations, coffee chats, interviews, panels, networking nights. These are always, that's just the stuff that our office hosts. The clubs do their own events and often bring in speakers themselves. And we try to partner with clubs whenever possible to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts. So it's preferably in person, but it doesn't have to be. Virtual works as well, depending upon the company. We know travel budgets are down, and so we're happy to do virtual events as well. We have our own proprietary job board at Sloan, so you're welcome to post a job with us. It's targeting just our students across our six programs. We also try to make it super easy. Like anybody can send an email to hire Sloanies, SLOANIES @MIT.edu. And it goes right to my team, and we can help you out. So, and I know the same thing on main campus. They try to make it as easy as possible to engage with us.
Got it. Isha, what from the students that are looking to either go the startup route or go into industry, are there some tips or kind of ways you can help retailers understand what those students are looking for from CCL? Because recognize retail is not always the most technically advanced industry. So it might be a little unnerving to say I'm talking to MIT's computer science people.
Yeah, I think kind of echoing on what Glenn said, I think it's about scoping problems that are interesting. They don't have to be like you're going to be solving the cutting edge of like tomorrow's future. I think it's more about I think one of the things I've learned that's been most interesting about like the PhD process, and one of the reasons I wanted to come to grad school is because I feel like during the process of doing a PhD, just like besides like technical skills, I think the most important like soft skill you learn is the concept of like scoping a problem. You enter into a space you kind of know nothing about, and by the end, you have figured out like what problem to solve, which is kind of sometimes the most challenging thing to figure out in the first place. How to solve it. You've encountered like 15 things that don't work, and by the end, you figure out one thing that worked, and then you pretend as if that was your plan all along, and you write this like very nice paper. I think the process of like scoping a problem is a skill that's not necessarily just valuable in a technical setting. So I think from a retailer point of view, just kind of like approaching people and introducing what problems they might be able to solve. They don't have to be, like I said, like the cutting edge of technology, but I think finding an interesting way to apply something that they're interested in, to something that would be helpful for your business. I think, and as long as it's anything that is an interesting problem to solve, I think a lot of people who graduate from grad schools are just looking for something that they can get their hands dirty with. It doesn't have to be something that's like directly in line with what they've been doing for the past couple years, or what they will be doing in the future. It's just kind of about like stimulating their, I don't know, problem solving part of their brain.
Well, you just wrote the job description for somebody who needs to do an enterprise transformation of a retailer to kind of utilizing artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? Like understand the problem
No, for sure.
and then figure out what doesn't work. And then
Exactly.
what do you think, Glenn?
Yeah, no, that I couldn't have said it better.
Glenn, what other opportunities do you think there are for retailers and direct-to-consumer kind of companies to engage with C-sales specifically? Is there anything we haven't talked about?
Yeah, so I think there's I hesitate to use these words because they have the wrong connotation, but some of the concerns that people have around AI and such, right? There's a lot of great research that's being done on those sorts of topics here too, right? And so I think to the extent that folks want to get more educated, want to have more conversations and understand what is the realm of the possible and where are there areas that could use more improvement, in terms of, say, cybersecurity or traceability of data or privacy, right? Those are topics that are actively being researched here. So, and then obviously there's students who are focused on those sorts of topics and could, bring that to, an employer. So I would say, while it's easy to think about AI and such as, it's these really smart bots that, are going to help automate and make things efficient. There are also some serious concerns around how do you make sure that things are private? How do you put together, good coding practices? Like I was just listening to some of our experts talking about how if we have LLMs being trained on, all that's out there today, and out there today is a lot of bad code, and things like Copilot are helping people write code, then ergo you're going to have bots writing more bad code, right? And so how do you think about that, and how do you correct for that? Well, we've got active research in there, those sorts of areas.
That's really cool.
And so just having people exposed to that, and again going back to where we started, we have such a great cross-section and interdisciplinary group of research going on here that you want folks who have a broad perspective, and obviously deep technical skills, but that broad perspective at a place like MIT is awesome. And so don't think about those AI hires as being very specialized, but there's opportunities where they can actually be a benefit to the organization at a very large scale. And I think you're getting a sample of that just in this panel, because all the way from people at the highest levels of business strategy all the way down to someone who's super technical and going to be studying something for the next few years. It's a pretty cool talent pool to pull from.
Great. Well, I wanted to shift gears here and take advantage of this talent pool to ask a few questions and ask the audience to ask a few questions. I will say that we've had one or two questions from incoming students, and I think we all want to say congratulations to those incoming students and their path forward. It's a wonderful achievement. So I guess I guess the first question I wanted to ask was, as you think about the, well, let me actually, before we do that, let me just check to see if there's any other open questions. No. So, we talked a little bit about this technology as being new. It's moving extremely quickly. And I'll throw this out to the panel, but I'm curious about, are there thinking or best practices, or have there been discussions in classes around educating current employees? And so it's easy to say we're going to hire, somebody to kind of do something, but we've got a great investment in resources that are dying to learn and love retail. Like, how can how can retailers create this culture of it's new and that's great versus I've always done it one way versus another? So I'll let anybody who has a burning desire to answer the question, I'll let you go, but I appreciate insight from any and all of you.
Yeah, maybe I can start quickly. So I think it maybe taps into just continuous professional development, right, at an organization. And I know a lot of companies, I've worked at a few, where they will have, budgets or programs that allow employees to learn and expand their own skill sets, right? And I think that's great to be able to offer that. We here at MIT have several such offerings, right? MIT Horizons is one group that does something similar to that, right? It provides resources for employees to basically get smart about topics, right? And in a very readable kind of lay fashion. And then we all have other programs, up to, paid professional programs that are, taught by MIT professors, and it runs over several weeks, and sometimes they're in person, sometimes they're virtual, and sometimes they're hybrid. So I think that's an important piece of it. There's one program I'll mention, and I think this is all publicly available. So we have a collaboration here at CSAIL with the Air Force, and it's their Air Force AI Accelerator. And amongst one of the things that they do is that they actually ship airmen here for a few weeks, in different cohorts, and their job is to, they're not going to learn everything there is about AI in a few weeks, but at least they get knowledgeable, and they sort of know what questions to ask, and know what some of the technology is capable of doing. And then they bring that back to their units. And so, developing a program like that may be something that companies might want to consider too, for, either some of their executives who need to understand it from a business strategy perspective, or some of their technical folks who may just need to be able to think about like how they consider business development, or product development, or process efficiency engineering and things like that. So I'll pass it on to others, but those are just a few thoughts.
Mark?
Yeah, I would definitely put a plug in for our executive ed programs. So we have AI specific programs in exec ed right now. In fact, there's one in conjunction with CSAIL, so on business AI and business strategy. So that's definitely a resource. And I'm a big fan of MIT Horizons too, as well, as that Glenn said, in terms of overall general knowledge about the topic. We've been around MIT's been around a long time, and had a very specific way of teaching that was in person, until that wasn't practical anymore 4 years ago, and it blew the entire model up. And on the fly, the university had to completely change. And so, and it did seem scary, but there was no turning back because of the pandemic. And I sort of feel the same way with AI. There's no turning back from this. And so we need to really embrace it in order to actually thrive going forward. And so that I would encourage people who are a little hesitant to just kind of dive in, because it's not coming years from now, it's here. So.
Hey, one last question, and then we'll wrap things up. And this goes to Sarah and Isha. And I want you to kind of cheat a little bit and give some hints to retailers as they're going through this process of evaluating and whether it's Sloanies or people from CSAIL, being able to get access and have these resources join their team is valuable in and of itself. But as they start to evaluate candidates, what are some of the, how can they evaluate the skills and resources that a potential candidate brings to the table? So, I'm a retailer. I'm trying to figure out, how do I interview? How do I suss out the best or the right knowledge that I need on my team? But this is all new language for me as a MIT student and a PhD candidate, like, and an MBA candidate. Look, what should I ask as a retailer to figure out where these students are in their thinking and whether they'll be a fit?
Yeah, I mean, I
Hard
think that's a
question,
really
isn't
great
it, Sarah?
question. Yeah, if I knew the answer, I think I would kind of mold myself to that and be the most hireable candidate on the planet. But no, I think a lot of maybe just anecdotally what employers might be missing in the recruiting process might be, what the candidate's actual motivations are and what their sort of long-term goals are. I think particularly in terms of like, just where they see themselves in 5 years, where the particular position that they're applying for fits into their longer term plan. And I'm not really speaking specifically like, oh, in 10 years I want to be in X company, X position, but more so just like how they view their own career trajectory and where that fits in with the current employer that they're having that conversation with. I think, in an MBA program, it's no secret the whole point of coming to the program is to accelerate your career. And so I think that's something that is almost taboo in some of these conversations that we're having. It's almost like the elephant in the room. So I think being able to sort of understand that and empathize with the students who are in that position, really understanding like, hey, you're seeking opportunities to be able to advance your career, and being able to offer those opportunities and say, hey, here are XYZ ways that we as an employer will be able to get you to where you see yourself in 5-10 years. I think that would go a really, really long way. And then I think just echoing everything else that's been said in terms of like really culture fit matters, having those conversations, being able to put a name to a face, really goes such a long way, particularly in a post-COVID setting.
Yeah. Aisha?
Yeah, I think I echo everything that Sarah said. I think just asking people why they want to do the job you're offering them. I think a lot of times, especially as Sarah mentioned, in kind of a rough job market, I think it's just important to figure out why people want to work with you. And like I said, it's a two-way street, right? Like why you want to work with them and why they want to work with you. Just making sure that the reasons for both of those are aligned, I think is important. And this is screen share. Okay. And yeah, I think I think that's kind of it. Just making sure that people are there to contribute the best versions of themselves that they can be. And yeah.
Yeah, it's some great comments. I think sometimes, especially retailers and business leaders who are uncomfortable with this topic, I think they have to understand that you're hiring a person, you're hiring a human being, and you have to understand them as a person and as a hire, and not a bunch of check boxes on a job description. So I really appreciate that feedback. Well, thank you very much for everybody. I want to say on behalf of SOFEL, on behalf of the Retail AI Council, I really want to express my gratitude to the panelists for their insight and contributions. And so again, thank you, Glenn, Aisha, Mark, and Sarah for sharing your expertise and your perspective. I'd also like to thank MIT, Sloan School, and CSAIL for their ongoing commitment to advancing AI and in research and education. And like a number of the panelists said, this is here now, and this is not going away. And it's important that we have people thinking about all of the pieces of the puzzle that need to come together. And I think you're looking at some of them here today. And thank you to the audience for taking the time to listen and to engage with questions. I've been told it's okay to share contact information for all of our panelists. So up on the screen are any emails for each of our panelists. And I would encourage folks to reach out. And also, if you have any questions about the Retail AI Council or the survey that we just completed, please feel free to join, become a member, become an active member, and we can get you the survey as well. So with that, I will close it off and say thanks again to our panel, and thanks for all in the background who helped make this come together.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeff, for moderating. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Bye.